When we think of serial killers, we might imagine cloaked figures ambushing women in alleyways. We might think of home invaders mutilating innocent people in their beds, or gloved intruders ready to dispense death with their bare hands. And all of these imagined serial killers have one thing in common. They have to actually be present to commit murder. But what if a homicidal maniac was able to commit murder from miles away? What if they could lay a trap for someone, so by the time an unfortunate soul happened to cross it, their perpetrator would be long gone? Such was the case in Japan in 1985. A mysterious perpetrator laced bottles of soda with a deadly chemical, taking 12 lives across 8 prefectures over the span of 7 months. More bizarrely, all of these sodas were purchased from vending machines around the country, in perhaps one of the most unique serial killing methods of all time. This unknown assailant literally dispensed death. The first victim. It was April 30th, 1985. When a 45-year-old truck driver stopped off at a vending machine on his route through Fukuyama, Hiroshima, to grab a drink. Before the driver made his purchase, he noticed a bottle of the popular energy drink Vitamin C sitting atop the machine. So, instead of purchasing a drink himself, he took the can of Vitamin C to quench his thirst. This may seem like a strange move, but this was a common practice in Japan at the time. The company behind Vitamin C, Otsuka Pharmaceutical Company, was heavily promoting the drink, and one of their marketing tricks was to dispense free bottles whenever people purchased similar sodas from vending machines. But many people, perhaps dissuaded by Vitamin C's medicinal taste or a desire to help out others, would leave these free bottles atop the vending machine for the next person to take. Japan's vending machine obsession is well documented, with an average of 1 vending machine for every 23 people scattered throughout busy streets, back alleyways, and malls across the country. A month later, on May 30th, 1985, the truck driver passed away. For weeks, he'd been feeling lethargic, disoriented, and nauseous. He'd been vomiting regularly, and only after he died did medical authorities find the man's vomit contained traces of paraquat, a lethal weed killer that had already been banned in over 30 countries, Japan included. Authorities couldn't quite determine how paraquat had found its way into this man's digestive system, so they assumed it was a freak accident. Paraquat was a deadly toxicant that couldn't exactly be consumed by mistake, since one would have to travel far and wide to find it. If drunk in concentrated form, it would cause a fast and agonizing death due to rapid inflammation of the tissue around the airways and blood vessels. The consumer's throat would be literally burned via chemicals. Since the truck driver's intake had been mixed with soda, the effects took longer to take hold. At first, investigators dismissed the idea of foul play, but just over 4 months later, the same thing happened again. Not just once, but 11 more times. 11 victims followed, almost all of them being carbon copies of the first. Someone would find a can of soda on top of a vending machine, consume it, and then die shortly after. All victims showed traces of paraquat in their system, and very soon, it became clear that there was a serial poisoner reigning in Japan. Only a handful of victims' names have been made public in this case, even in its home country. This many poisonings in such a short span of time couldn't be a coincidence, especially given the similarities in each incident. It seemed that someone was taking drinks from vending machines, lacing them with poison, and placing them back. The killer even utilized Vitamin C's marketing tactics to their advantage, disguising laced drinks as unwanted freebies. But despite the police efforts, they quickly discovered that finding this killer would be like chasing shadows. The killer could have laced the drinks with paraquat at any time, any day, then disappeared into the crowds. He or she could target literally any vending machine in the country, and so far, he or she had covered around 400 miles of ground. The victims could be of any age, any race, and any gender. This was a completely random poisoner who utilized multiple means of anonymity to his or her advantage. Even the murder weapons were already disposed of by the time the victim felt unwell. disposed of directly by the victim, no less. Police then had to look at other factors to try and find potential suspects, but they barely made any progress. There was a distinct lack of CCTV cameras near all of the respective vending machines. There was no clear motive. The killer had no control over his victim choice. The whole thing was a baffling mystery. One factor of the crime stood out above the rest. There were 12 victims in total, 11 of whom were men. But the killing stopped when a 17-year-old girl lost her life, the only female of the group. This could possibly be a coincidence. After all, Oranamin C was an energy drink marketed toward white-collar Japanese workers, and many of the vending machines were in public office areas. It was a statistical probability that an older male would consume the laced drinks given the situational demographics. Equally as concerning, once news of these poisonings broke out, it spurred a number of copycat crimes throughout Japan. In December 1985, the New York Times wrote, "One byproduct has been a spurt of copycat crimes. Twice in the last few weeks, for example, someone has left tainted containers of milk in schools in my prefecture in central Japan." In addition to these poisoned milk bottles, police discovered 2 incidents of soda bottles laced with lime and sulfur that made 2 consumers gravely ill. Just like the Paraquat murders, the culprits were never found. If you're enjoying our content and want to see 2 new videos a week, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and letting us know in the comments what you want our next video to feature. To ensure these incidents didn't happen again, the Japan Soft Drink Bottlers Association took extra precautions to protect their consumers. Around the country, over 1 million warning labels were plastered on vending machines, warning buyers of the dangers of taking left-out bottles or cans. The creators of Oranamin C, the Otsuka pharmaceutical company, redesigned their drink products from a screw cap to a pull tab to prevent anyone from tampering with the product discreetly. Strangely, however, few other drink manufacturers made such effort to protect their consumers' health. Some authorities even had some stern words for their victims. Spokesman of the Japan Soft Drink Bottlers Association, Takeo Mizuchi, said, "If only consumers were more cautious, they would have seen that some tampering had been done." The months went by, and no perpetrators were uncovered. Fortunately, there were no more deaths either. The 12 poisonings were confined to a 7-month period, 11 of which took place within 9 weeks. But there was one theory hanging loosely on the lips of authorities. There was another mysterious assailant, who only the previous year had anonymously tormented a number of food companies. Could the incidents be linked? Through 1984 and 1985, a mysterious perpetrator or group calling themselves the Monster with 21 Faces conducted an extortion and blackmail campaign against a number of Japanese food and drink companies. Glico, a food company that produces a wide range of Japanese favorites, was the main target of the Monster's torment. On March 18, 1984, 2 men in ski masks abducted the president of Glico, a man named Katsuhasu Izaki, from his home and took him to an empty warehouse in Ibaraki, Osaka. The abductors left the man there, but luckily Izaki was able to escape after 3 days of confinement. After his escape, the Monster with 21 Faces began tormenting Glico and the police with letters, eventually demanding the equivalent of $11 million in payment, or they would burn down the company's flagship building. They also set fire to vehicles at the company headquarters and somehow managed to sneak a container of hydrochloric acid inside the building. Later, the Monster tormented Morinaga, another confectionery company with similar letters. Police investigated these threats, eventually pulling a number of products off the shelves throughout Tokyo and Western Japan. They discovered over a dozen lethal packages of Morinaga's Angel Pie and Choco Balls, all contaminated with deadly chemicals. The Monster's operation lasted until August 1985, overlapping with one incident of the Paraquat poisonings. One of the ironies of the case concerns the fact that Japanese police had so few resources to dedicate to the Paraquat case, because most officers were busy on the Monster case. Therefore, it's possible that the case that distracted them may have actually been linked. But despite their similarities, no evidence tied the 2 cases together. The Monster with 21 Faces was very quick to take credit for their actions, whereas the Paraquat poisoner never once made his or her identity known. With every little crime the monster pulled off, a letter claiming responsibility followed. This was not the case with the vending machine deaths, who seemed to relish in the anonymity. Furthermore, the monster's motivation appeared to be financial gain, whereas the paraquat's poisoner's motivation remains unclear. The monster with 21 faces even publicly resigned from their reign of terror with a final letter in August 1985. The police superintendent of the Saga prefecture, the man tasked with catching the monster, committed suicide the same month. The fact he couldn't catch the monster drove him into a deep depression, so he burned himself alive. The monster's final letter said, "Don't let bad guys like us get away with it. There are many more fools who want to copy us." No career Yamamoto, the police superintendent, died like a man. So we decided to give our condolence. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. If anyone blackmails any of the food-making companies, it's not us, but someone copying us. We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life. Could this simply have been the monster's way of misdirecting the press and police? Or were they genuinely ceasing their reign of terror? It seemed as though they were telling the truth, as the monster with 21 faces was never heard from again, and nothing linked them to the crimes of the vending machine killer. These incidents remain two of Japan's most bizarre and alluring mysteries, and given the time that's elapsed since then, it's very doubtful we'll ever know all the answers. Have ideas for any other stories or features? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.